There's been a lot of talk about the protesters killed in Iran. It was one of the main reasons. This is how the media have been trying to stir up tensions to get the public on side. And I noticed another thing came up on Piers Morgan, a panel that were talking about it. And straight away, the same old playbook is to say, obviously, no, they killed the protesters, we've got to go in and help the people. But, like you say, this video was from maybe a month before the war, when there was murmurs of this starting, and I think it's just interesting. Patrick ended up going to Iran after this video we're going to watch first, so it's just interesting to hear the views of independent journalists.
From Canada, from the U.S. In the West, basically saying they've shut down the internet and we need to support the people, the democratic, aspirational democracy movement in Iran because the Khamenei, their supreme leader, is going to kill them, and there's a fake story that the regime has butchered 6,000 or 10, and now it's 10,000. It keeps going up. And all of these Western influencers who are being paid probably a princely sum for their efforts, based from all this dark money for all this influence, and all this stuff has been given an open lane on X by Elon Musk. He is the algorithm is promoting all these. I'm getting it in my feed, and I don't follow any of these accounts. So Elon Musk's X is giving priority, his algorithm, to all of this regime change propaganda. Clearly, I don't follow any of these accounts. Why are they appearing? And they're getting viral traction, but they're fake videos and just kind of well-heeled supermodels, ex-Iranian diaspora in Canada saying, we need to get out and fight from her $1 million apartment.
I tell you, they started saying it was 4,000, 6,000. And then recently, obviously, this was filmed before the 28th of Feb. But recently, in May, they spoke about 40,000, 50,000 protesters. But when Patrick actually goes to Iran to find out what's happening, it is very interesting to see.
It's like, it's surreal. But
and what do you make of the entirely coincidental, I'm sure, that all of these protests started almost the same day that Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump? Sure, it's a coincidence, I'm sure.
No, and Donald Trump also telegraphed in his clumsy way. He said, look, if the Iranian government, shoot any of these protesters, which is their custom, he said, like it's customary for the Iranian government to shoot their own people. It's not. But Trump said, if that happens, then we might just have to go and, bomb them, basically. So by Trump doing that, and that corresponded with all of, Mike Pompeo gloating about Mossad's involvement in fomenting, unrest, in ramping up, firebombing mosques and all the stuff they're doing. You put those two things together. So if Mossad shoots somebody, then Trump will use that, or the Iranian police shoot back. And this is basically what they're doing. This is gladio tactics, which is they start a physical altercation. Somebody gets beat up, and then the police move in, the Iranian police, and then the agent provocateurs shoot at the Iranian police, and then the police shoot back, and then all of a sudden, potentially an innocent person could get killed in that time. But that gets traction, and then that's reported as, the regime, basically. This is standard agent provocateur tactics that the U.S. And their, NATO have used for.
And this is the thing. Before the 28th, there was, especially the young students in Iran, who weren't happy with the regime, as the West like to call it. Obviously, they were more secular. They were more liberal. Everyone's got phones now, social media. They see how people live in the West. And a lot of these youngsters would worry, why does me dad hate America? Why does me granddad hate America? Why does me uncle hate America? Fast forward a couple of months, we know why. They know why. And they're all now in support. They do not want to negotiate. They want to stand up to the bully, and rightly so. People forget. We all associate all Muslims as the same, but the Shia and the Sunni are very different. Like, and it's an interesting topic. We'll get into it at a later time.
For decades, in fact, and the Maidan in Ukraine is a perfect example of that sort of tactic. So by telegraphing it, Trump has kind of given the game away that this whole thing was staged. And quite clearly it is. Now, there are genuine opposition, genuine protest movements in Iran, and they've already met with the government. They've already had meetings, and the government has taken them in, heard their grievances. There's dialogue going. But while you have genuine, reformist protesters in Iran, you have all these foreign-backed, and these could be people inserted. These could be informants, agents, of which there are many. That could be the MEK. The MEK is the Mujahideen al-Kaq, is a terrorist organization that used to be proscribed by the United States, but their prescription was lifted thanks to Hillary Clinton and other U.S. politicians, and it opened the floodgate for money to pour into the coffers of a lot of congressmen and senators, state senators as well, people that they would go to these MEK rallies, which we can talk about later because I've been to at least one of them, where they promise, our politicians will promise the Iranian diaspora in America that they will overthrow the regime. John Bolton was involved in this as well. And said, we'll be marching on Tehran this time next year. And
I remember that. Yeah.
Write out the big checks, like literally the wealthy Iranians in America will start writing out checks for all these politicians.
And that's the thing, like the diaspora or the diaspora, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. A lot of the expats, Iranians in America, they were all in with the Shah, Reza Pahlavi. That's why they all want his son, Reza Pahlavi, to be the Shah, the king of Iran again, because they all benefited from that. That's how they all got their money. The average people in Iran can't just get a passport and leave. But when the revolution happened in 79, all the wealthy families that were all getting kickbacks from America for the oil, when the revolution happened, they all left. No wonder they want the son of the Shah to reign, because then the money starts flowing again.
Politicians. So as a way to kind of keep money circulating into U.S. politics, promising a lot, probably not delivering anything, but they're not going to give up. The MEK has been relocated from Iraq, and now they've got a camp in Albania. It's probably managed by our intelligence services, I would imagine, as a sort of a piece on the board to use to destabilize terrorist attacks, insert people, and they have people on the ground as we speak.
You said something I thought was really interesting that I had never thought about before. I want you to expound on a little here. Is you said a lot of these folks who were all about regime change, there's more than one regime change group, and they're almost competing with each other. Can you explain that?
So the United States has been using the MEK ever since they proscribed them and allowed them to, be quote opposition group. The MEK killed American soldiers in Iran. They're a Marxist, kind of a hybrid, Marxist, Islamist, but not in the Takfiri Sunni sense. Slightly different, but they're regarded as a terrorist organization, hit U.S. targets in the 70s. And the U.S. managed to co-opt them after the revolution, because obviously America has proven they will work with anybody, Nazis, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, it doesn't matter. The United States will work with them, even people who have killed U.S. citizens or soldiers. That's not, the United States government has no qualms about working with anybody, as long as it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and means to an end. So the MEK came under the umbrella of the CIA, and so now you have a problem, because the Iranian diaspora, a lot of them who've been bankrolling this effort in America, and all the U.S. politicians have been filling their pockets, including Rudy Giuliani, Howard Dean, John Bolton, John McCain. These people were featured prime on the MEK's sort of celebrity speakers list. Very well paid, by the way. And that's open source information. It's not a rumor. That's known. Many people have written extensively on this. Then you have the wealthy diaspora. Many of them back the son of the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. Okay. And he's been in the, hanging out in Los Angeles for 50 years. Left Iran probably when he was a teenager, I would imagine, during the Islamic Revolution in 1979. So, and he's promoted a lot. The Israelis are really promoting the Shah's son. He's gone to the wall. He's done the whole thing with Netanyahu. So very, very Zionist, very pro-Zionist. The problem is he doesn't know anybody in Iran because he's never been there since his family fled during the fall of that monarchy. So they're they're fighting with the MEK right now. And the MEK supporters in the U.S. So the Israeli intelligence, U.S. intelligence have backed the MEK, have used it to carry out assassinations, terrorist attacks in Iran. This is one of many terrorist groups that the United States backs. So all this talk about Iran as the number one state sponsor of terror is patently ridiculous.
It's like when people say that, and you hear Netanyahu and Trump saying in Hegseth, we've been at war with Iran for 47 years, since 1979, since the revolution, since they basically kicked the Shah and the Savak, who, the Savak, by the way, were brutal. We'll happily get into that at some point. But they say this about Iran. Everyone's got phones now. We've got Google. We've got ChatGPT. Whatever you use. Just ask the question, who have Iran attacked in the last 46 years? Nobody. They've been in one war with Iraq where Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons given to him by Germany, the UK and America. And did Iran retaliate? They could have used chemical weapons, but no. They had a fatwa, they had a law saying that nukes and chemical weapons were un-Islamic, were basically a crime against humanity, and they wouldn't do it. So then people point out, well, they fund Hamas, they fund Hezbollah. So they're helping the people who are being oppressed. When the regime comes in, the occupiers, to try and take their land, bulldoze their houses, because Iran stands up for them and helps them, gives them aid. Yes, they might give them weapons. But Trump's openly admitted now, since this war started, that he armed the rioters during these said protests. The state sponsor of terrorism, honestly. There's one, the USA.
The United States clearly is right up there at the top of the league tables. But anyway, that aside, they're now fighting over the scraps of what potentially could be what they think is going to be a regime change. That's a fait accompli. And so the Shah doesn't really have a popular support base in Iran. Doesn't know anybody. He's quite happy to be living in Los Angeles and hanging out in LA. Jet setting. So now their supporters are arguing with each other publicly. Rudy Giuliani, who's very pro MEK, he's not supporting the Shah's people. So they're all basically fighting with each other. So now they've also got this youth movement that is all over social media. They don't have a leader. There's no viable opposition to follow in Iran. So this thing is just burning itself out, this virtual revolution, this color revolution, a lot of which the visibility is just on the internet. And this is the same problem the United States had with the Green Revolution in 2009. And this was when Twitter was just launched. So Twitter played a big role in fomenting the English language messaging during the Green Revolution, and all of these, open API, managing multiple Twitter accounts. A lot of that technology was developed by the United States just for regime change activity, and some of it made its way into the commercial sector after that. But they used these, bot accounts. This was pioneered from the Iran so-called revolution in 2009. And these were running from the United States, English language signs, English language tweets, and that was prior to the Arab Spring. So it was very important. They really felt, the Democratic Party and the State Department at that time, the CIA at that time, sort of the Obama, John Brennan kind of, CIA, they believed that this was the future. And they parlayed that into the Arab Spring. Big tech played a very central role in that, including Google. And they really thought that they've really cracked it here, this color revolution thing. This can be done and almost automated on the internet. And it was so successful, to some degree, it was successful. And I think, unfortunately, that idea is still stuck in the heads of central planning in the U.S. And that's where they're throwing all their money now towards influencers. And I don't think it really nets the sort of results, even less than before. It wasn't successful before, and I think less so now.
And that, like you say, that was him speaking before. Patrick actually went to Iran, and when he came back, he had another interview with Daniel Davis. I would recommend following both, but this is just, like you say, independent journalism. He actually went and did his research, and it's interesting, I think, what he's got to say.
It's a mockery of the English language. It's a mockery of the U.S. Intelligence institutions that have already, on multiple occasions, given a comprehensive assessment that Iran doesn't have the bombs, not pursuing the bomb. So it's a total canard. It's a lie. But it's the biggest, it's the highest level of lie in order to justify this level of a military attack. In the last month, Trump can't decide on what basis that we need to do a preemptive strike against the Iranians again. First, it was to defend the peaceful protesters in this color revolution gambit at the beginning of January. That sort of hit the wall and faded and died. And then there's a whole propaganda campaign, which is just complete fake news and lies and propaganda generated by the U.S. and Israeli interests in the West to give this impression that there was this giant massacre of Iranian protesters with zero evidence, only U.S.-based Iranian human rights NGOs, many of which are CIA cutouts or NED funded. That's where the evidence was. And Trump ran with this. The media is still running with this. Most people in America believe that. So they've already manufactured the consent that the so-called regime in Tehran is evil and, you know, massacring their own people, committing genocide. It's a great distraction from what Israel's doing in Gaza, of course, very convenient. Then Trump has to pivot and say, no, it's the nuclear program. Again, he supposedly destroyed. We destroyed it, Operation Midnight Hammer. Okay, it's not that. Now then he pivots, it's the ballistic missile program. It's the missiles. Can't have the missiles. It's part of the deal. Can't have the missiles. And now he's pivoting back to the nuclear question. So there's zero evidence. Zero. This is more threadbare than Saddam Hussein's WMDs, because at least you could say back in history that Saddam had chemical weapons at some point. At least there was like some record of it, so at least you can make the fake argument that Saddam was keeping all these secret chemical weapon stocks. Therefore, you know, at least there was sort of a half of a lie you could mail in there under the door. But like this, there's nothing. The U.S., I hear a lot of rhetoric from the U.S., a lot of back and forth, a lot of confusion, a lot of inconsistency, a lot of incoherence from the entire U.S. government and punditry on this. And yet the fact that Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, cannot decide on the basis or the excuse to launch an unprovoked war that will cascade into a regional war. And if it cascades into a regional war, other major actors will ultimately be pulled in at some point. And then we have a different type of war at that point. Just from that clip, you heard the first gentleman repeating the lie that Iran has massacred 30,000 of its people in the streets. Absolute balderdash, okay? Absolute lie, profound on a level that's just so obvious, okay? And this is repeated ad nauseum across the U.S. mainstream media, in Congress and the Senate. Our whole country is just based on a bevy of lies when it comes to foreign policy. And this is beyond just having an opinion or complaining about it. This is actually dangerous at this point. This is very dangerous for the Iranians, of course, it's for the Israelis, for the region, for the United States, for the world. Okay, and let me tell you about this assumption that because that lie of the 30,000 massacred in the protest, which never happened. Okay, so I met with the chief of police in Tehran, We've been shown some of the evidence files of. I personally saw at least 8 police officers burned to death. They were burned alive. Hundreds of police were killed. Many innocent bystanders. These armed protesters, these rioters, killed EMS workers, first responders. They attacked the fire department when it came after they burned mosques and buildings. When the fire department showed up, they then attacked them and tried to, destroyed some of their vehicles. Buses were burned. Total chaos. So this whole idea of these protests never happened in terms of the U.S. narrative of it. It never happened. What in terms of Iranian losses in that, again, from these violent protesters, they lost 2,400 people in total. That includes innocent bystanders. And non-martyrs, according to the Iranian numbers, was 700. So 700 agent provocateurs or people involved in violence to one degree or another are counted as belligerents. This is what's inferred in the data, a total being casualties across the board, 3,170, all named with national ID numbers next to them, okay? And there were a few hundred or a number of bodies that were unrecognizable, unidentifiable because they were burned to death, okay? That's the reality of what happened. And some of this has obviously been circulated, the images and so forth, what I just mentioned, on the Iranian national media. Was any of this circulated on the Western mainstream media? No, because
this is the thing. People will say, "Oh, well, you can't trust the Iranians. Who's to say their numbers are correct?" But you'll happily trust the numbers coming out of Israel, or trust the numbers coming out of America. Like Patrick went, he went and walked where it happened. He spoke to police officers. He spoke to people on the streets. Like. But let's just get it, because it doesn't fit the narrative. And even if there was 30,000 protesters killed, what right does that give any other country to start bombing civilians and blowing up schools and hospitals? If there was protesters killed on the streets of Newcastle, I don't think I'd be too impressed. If Germany or Russia just started bombing, yes, you don't want any death. Killing innocents is wrong, it's immoral. But this narrative, honestly, people need to honestly listen to what Patrick's saying. He went there, like you say, oh, well, he's paid by Russia, he's paid by Iran. It's like, no, he just wants to know what the truth is.
This undercuts the narrative. So that's the first lie that's important, because that establishes in the minds of Americans in the West that the regime is not popular, it's oppressing its own people, it's killing its own people. Therefore, regime change is inevitable. Okay, it's a fait accompli. Not true. So when I arrived in Tehran, I arrived on Wednesday at 8 a.m. I cleared customs at 9 or something like that, and I was with a number of other very well-known Western journalists as well, a few, and we went, and it was the National Rally Day in downtown Tehran. And so I managed to get there before it finished, before noon. And it was a record number attendance for their National Independence Day, effectively. 2.5 million estimated in Tehran, all total around the country in all cities, 20 million. 20 million came out in support of the government, in support of the Supreme Leader. In fact, the Supreme Leader is the one who called for the people to come out. And
if Keir Starmer asked people to come out and support the Labour Party and the British government, yeah, I know there's only 70 million, there's 90 million in Iran, but how many people would be on the streets? And I think Daniel Davis gets into it. He's like, well, what happens if they were forced to? It's like, force how many people are you going to do? Arrest them all? It's like, come on.
It came out, show me, Danny, one Western government or any government in the world that can make that call and pull millions of people on the street to support the government. Tell me where that exists. Millions.
And what do you say to those who say, oh, well, that's just because it's a totalitarian state and they had to come out or they would be in trouble? What do you say to that?
What are they going to go and arrest like 20 million people? I mean, the argument's a joke. And the argument that people make against this is a delusional argument that just doesn't want to admit the fact that it's an Islamic republic. It's a republic. Every single position is elected except for the supreme leader, which serves as a type of a vestigial, similar to maybe a monarch in a symbolic sense, like England or Great Britain, but and something like more like the Pope in terms of a spiritual leader. But supreme leader doesn't draft laws and pass legislation or anything like that. It's there. It's kind of the populist leader, if you will, of the country, has a direct line to the people, and so it also it's the spiritual and philosophical and ethical intermediary that it exists between the parliamentary government, if you will, and the population. I mean, that's their system. And it's not a normal system like you see in other countries, but based on what I saw in terms of the response and the popularity, and obviously not everybody likes the supreme leader, not everybody is rabidly pro-government, definitely not in Iran. And they have counter protests. They had one when I was there. I wasn't in Tehran, it was in another city around the country. But they're extremely popular. The revolutionary government that took power in 1979 after 47 years is still popular. They're still popular.
Let me ask.
Absolutely crazy. Like, you hear the narratives being spun by the BBC on your phone, on the news, on social media. But the thing is everyone's got phones now. Everyone can record, and you see stuff with your own eyes, and you hear from the people who were there. And the thing about this 40,000, yes, it would be tragic, but what right does that give anyone from another country to go in and start killing children, blowing up hospitals? We're pointing our anger in the wrong place. The state sponsor of terrorism. Google it, show me. But read the book Ghost Wars about the CIA and the Mujahideen. Read the book The Plot to Attack Iran. There's clearly one state sponsor of terrorism, and it is not Iran. Believe me. Let us know what you think anyway.